Steve made his first visit to India in 1972. And for the next, well, not for the new people today, Stephen. Stephen. I know,
just want to talk.
I know you're famous, and I'm infamous, but in 72, for the next 30 years, he spent as much time in India as he could, including living there as a resident from 1982 to 1986. While there, he worked with Bal Natu on the Glimpses series, and also with Erich editing stories that became That's How It Was. I was going to tell you Steve will give 3 talks, but he's not. He doesn't give talks. So with no further ado, our guest speaker, Mr. Steve Klein.
No. How about now? Okay, there we go. So, as Paul said, I don't give talks. I just tell stories and read some prosums. And I think it's on the program, this is going to be something about the difference between the inner and the outer. Hopefully I'll get to that. I always end up interrupting myself so many times I never get through half of my material. But it's going to be about relationships, because we all have relationship with Baba of one sort or another. And Bal Natu used to say that, some people see Baba as God, and they see him as kind of a stern, judgmental God looking over your shoulder, seeing are you doing the right thing or the wrong thing, and for most of us, we're doing the wrong thing. And so it's a different relationship. I never wanted that relationship. So he said, some people see Baba as their mother and father. He said, even that I didn't want, because parents, discipline you, and parents correct you. So I looked upon Baba as my grandparents. Because, well, we can ask Paula, but grandparents just unconditionally love. They leave all the hard stuff to the parents. They've already gone through that. So he said that was his relationship. And my wife, Daphne's mother, came to India 3 times. She fell in love with the Mandali. Her relationship with Baba, we never really knew. We think she sort of thought of Baba as kind of like a glorified social worker. Apolitical Gandhi or something. We weren't sure, but on her last day of one of her trips, she was in Mandali Hall, and Mani told the following story. Mani said one day in Guru Prasad, it was a darshan day. It was an open day. People were there. And Baba was always busy doing different things. He's making jokes with someone. He's asking how's your husband? He's better? And yes, he's much better. But different things were going. And 2 women come in, Western women. And Baba was always very attentive and very observant, not as God, but as a man. And so he knew Westerners don't like to sit cross-legged on the floor. That's just difficult. So he had somebody bring 2 chairs. And so they sat down, the chairs. And so all these things are going on. And periodically Baba would turn to them and say, anything you want to ask? They say, no, Baba. And then again, it would go on. Anything? No, Baba. Finally, the 3rd time, she said, well, Baba, there is something. What's that? She said, Baba, is it okay if I don't take you as God? And Baba said, well, what do you take me as? And she said, a friend. And Mani said, Baba's face just lit up in this huge smile. And Baba went, very good. Take me as your friend. I will be the best friend you will ever have. And later that day, Daphne's mother said to us, so you see, it doesn't matter what I think. Baba's sister says it's okay. I can take Baba to be whatever I want. And Baba did say, whatever you take me to be, I am. And all of us, and even all the Mandali, have very different relationships with Baba. With the Mandali, there was no question about their love, but the nature of the relationship was very different. For instance, Rano and Narina had a very different way of relating to Baba. So when Rano came, and when they all came to be in Nasik in 37, Narina was the house manager. And what Rano wanted to do was hear as much about Baba as she could, because they couldn't always, they weren't with Baba that much. So when they had free time in the evening, she would go to the men and hear Dr. Gunny talk about Baba. And she loved that. And actually, I heard Balna too when he came, used to love to go hear, everyone loved to go hear Dr. Gunny tell stories about Baba. Because he not only knew stories about Mansley Meen, but he knew stories about Baba when he was a little kid. I mean, Baba called him sort of a diaper friend, langosti, dust friend, but sort of diaper. From the diaper stage, they had been friends. So anyway, Rana would go to listen to Dr. Gunny, and she'd come back, and she'd find she'd been locked out. Because Narina was the house manager and was very strict about that and did not like the fact that Rana was wandering off to consort with men. I mean, it just wasn't right. So eventually it came to Baba, and Baba had some compromise. Well, you can't lock her out. That's not right. But Rana, you've got to be back by a certain time. But they had a different way of looking at things. So for instance, one day Baba said they had to stay in the compound. I mean, the Nasik people, they weren't allowed to leave. And I don't know what time period we're talking about, like whether that was weeks or a month, but one time Bob said, okay, on such and such a day, we're going to leave we can go out, we can do whatever we want. What do you want to do? And of course, Narina just wanted to stay and meditate on Bob. And Rana wanted to go out and have a picnic. And that just shows sort of the different nature they had with Baba. That I had said that about how my wife's mother decided, okay, Baba, it's okay, we could take him to do whatever we want. On the other hand, though, sort of a counterpoint to that is that there was a couple, Francis and Ola Goldney, who found out about Baba, and he found out in the late 50s and fell in love with Baba. And Baba invited them to come, told them to come and stay in India for a year. And Francis was going to help Irene Coneybear, who was writing a book. And so they came. And Ola wasn't as taken with Baba as Francis was. And it also didn't help that when she came, she immediately got dysentery. That tends to put a damper on things. And the women said, we tried. We tried to interest her in gardening because she liked to garden, but we just couldn't get her to loosen up. And Baba would tease her and joke with her, but she just was kind of very reticent. And while they were there, Baba had a poor program. And Baba would, wash the feet of poor people and give them money. And so this was outside. They'd have those little tables you've seen in the museum. And Baba would pour water on the feet and wash their feet and so on, and then give them some money or some cloth, and they would walk off. And Ola is watching this with Francis, and they're sitting behind Baba. So Baba's not aware. They're behind. He can't see them. He can't hear what they're saying. And Ola's watching this, and it reminds her of Jesus. And she says to her husband, he really is a good man. And Baba instantly turns to her and gestures, not a good man, the God man. And she said there was something about the way Baba looked at her that in that moment she accepted him as the avatar. But Irene Coneybear, when she met Baba, actually when she came, she didn't get to see Baba. Baba wasn't there. And Baba sent a message, I want you to go to America and do my work there. He's sending, we've never even met. He's sending, how can he do that? He doesn't know me. And the people she did meet, Narina said, oh no, don't worry about it. Baba knows you. Don't worry about it. But she finally got to meet Baba. And then Baba, told her, yes, I want you to go back to America with Narina and you can do my work there. And then afterwards, well, what was it like? Weren't you overwhelmed? Didn't you feel the spiritual emanations, the radiant, on and on? Narina was very dramatic and flowery, and Irene, unfortunately, hadn't really felt any of that. And I found it very amusing. They were in Bombay, and for some reason, they had to wait for a couple weeks to get their steamer. And Irene wrote Baba a letter asking for a spiritual experience. It seems like mostly so she can keep up her end of the conversation with Narina. And I thought that was very funny. I used to want a spiritual experience, but it wasn't to keep up my end of the conversation. But even funnier is that Baba gave her one. So when they sailed off to America, she and Norina could have a nice discussion. But I was saying they all had different relationships. Kaikabad took Baba as God and took him very seriously. And to the point where at one point he and Marwan were playing cards and were against Baba and someone else, doesn't matter, on a team. And Marwan and Kaikabad were winning. And Kaikabad thought that was fine. His idea of God is that you were allowed to win at cards. But they were playing, and I don't remember the name. It's in Marwan's book. I don't remember the name. But there's something if you, like, are going to get all the tricks. You're making the other person wear like a shit coat or something. It's some term. And you announce it. You know, you're going to go for this complete humiliation of the other side. And so Marwan said, Kaikabad, let's do it. You can't do that to Baba. You can play cards, you can win, but you couldn't, that was a step too far. But Marwan, of course, had a different relationship. And so at one point, he and Baba were playing caroms together. And they were on a team against some other team. And Baba was not doing well. He was just missing his shots. And so at one point, he's got a shot. And Marwan sees, oh, Baba's going to miss it. So he comes over and says, no, Baba, put your hands like this, put your thumb like this. And is arranging it so he can have a good shot. Baba just, who do you think you are? And realized, oh, okay, I've gone a little too far now. And then Baba, of course, just cleaned off the table, making all the shots, showing he could have done any time he wanted. Erich's mother, Gai Mai, by nature was superstitious. I mean, to me, all Parsis are superstitious, but that's just me, because they all have these ideas and customs. You know, the eggs waving over your head to keep away the evil spirits and that sort of thing, and auspicious days and this and that. And when Marwan, her son, Erich's brother, was in the hospital in Pune in 1980, he had Guillain-Barré syndrome. You know, you gradually get paralyzed, and it comes up, it can kill you. And in Marwan's case, it came up to his neck and then gradually went down. And he'd been in the hospital for weeks. And so finally, he was well enough that they were going to send him home. And we were all so excited. Marwan was coming home. On Monday, Marwan was being released. And Gama said, he can't come home on Monday. We said, why not? She said, it's not an auspicious day. So he had to stay in the hospital. We thought any day in the hospital was an inauspicious day. But he wasn't allowed to come home. But this had been her trait. And her brothers, she had 5 brothers. You've met some of them. In fact, when the brothers first met Baba, I think in 22, when they had gone for a walk, they lived in Ahmednagar across from the bus station, Sata Colony, Akbar Press. And they heard the saint had come. They went walking out to Mehrabad, and they met him. And that very first day, Baba asked them questions. How many brothers are you? And they said 5. And Baba said, no, 6. I'm your brother. So anyway, the brothers were just really, I guess, got exasperated at Gai Mai. And so they said, Baba, what is this nonsense? Auspicious days and inauspicious days and so on. She doesn't have any faith in you. If she had faith in you, she wouldn't worry about any of this stuff. It's all in your hands. And Baba said, leave her alone. She has 100% faith in me. Let her do whatever she wants. But again, as counterpoint to that, Mayurji, who came to Baba as a teacher in his school in 1927, then was sent to Persia to do business, to what's now Iran, and became a businessman. And after, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, he came back to India to see Baba. And he'd started off with very little money. And in fact, the way he got started in he had a lot of different business ventures, is he wrote away for free samples from companies. And he got their free samples, and then he sold them. and that gave him a little capital to begin his business. So he had a lot of different products that he was selling. And this was, I think he'd come back in 1941 and hadn't seen Baba in several years. It was wartime. And before he met Baba, he'd seen a friend of his who said, how are you doing? He said, well, thanks to Baba, I'm doing pretty well now. I have a fair amount of money. I'm worth something now. But I don't actually have money. It's all in goods. And the man said, oh, well, it's wartime. I think just sell everything now. You can't trust what the economy is going to be like in war. It's just uncertain. You should get your money now where you can. And he said, have you seen an astrologer about this? And Mayurji said, I have no interest. No, you should see an astrologer. So he convinced him to have have his chart done. So they send his father, he writes his father, and his father has the chart done by an astrologer. And the astrologer looks at the chart, agrees, this is not a good, you should sell everything and get your money now while you can. So Mayurji sends a telegram to all of his businesses, sell. Whatever price you can get. No haggling, just sell. And then he goes to see Baba. And Baba hadn't seen him for several years. So Baba's at, how was it? I want to know everything you've done in the 4 years you've been in Iran, or 10, whatever length of time. And so he's telling this, he's telling him about his businesses. And then he says, and I had my chart done. The astrologer said I should sell everything. And so I sent a telegram saying to sell everything. Baba said, what? You did what? Baba said, who made the stars? And Mayurji said, well, you did, Baba, you're God. So I made the stars and you're listening to someone else about what to do? Send a telegram now, cancel that. Don't sell it all. Do what I say. Pay no attention to what some astrologer says about the stars. I control everything. And so Mayurji did, and he made a fortune on that. And then became, millionaire and very wealthy, and Baba used that in his cause. But again, just the different things. One person, let her be superstitious. No, have nothing to do with astrology. So, I guess you can take from it whatever you want. One thing I take away from this is that even though Baba is always the same, we all have different relationships with him. And there is only one soul, one truth, and one love. And the beloved is the personification of that. And yet there are as many beloveds as there are drop souls. My Baba is not the same as your Baba, even though we're talking about the same Baba. What your Baba says to you is not the same thing that my Baba says to me. The path he walks with you is not the same as the one he guides me along. Your Baba delights when you joke with him or try to cheat at cards. My Baba reminds me, don't forget, I am God. His Baba tells him something else, and her Baba tells her something else completely different. Each drop soul has their own Baba, even though they may not call him that, believe in him, or have even heard his name. Each drop soul is doing what their Baba is prompting them to do, even if this flies in the face of everything that your Baba is telling you. To judge others, therefore, in a way, is to judge Baba. And Baba has assured us of 4 things. 1, nothing happens without his will. 2, if anyone is to be blamed for anything, it is he. 3, despite all evidence to the contrary, Baba knows what he's doing. And 4, even though it seems hard to believe, things are going to turn out all right at the end. And in the meantime, my Baba is telling me that this is coming dangerously close to preaching, and I should lighten up. So, what about a Sufi, a mystic, and a sadhu walked into a bar? And the lover didn't have to because she was already drunk. So, not a great joke, but it touches upon the idea of this disparity sometimes between inner behavior and outer behavior. One thing that it seemed to me is that Baba, whatever you took Baba accepted that. But the one thing Baba seemed to really want is, don't pretend to be something you aren't. Just be honest. If this is who you are, be that with me. I accept it. And especially, it seems like with spiritual pretension, don't pretend to be pious. Don't pretend to be devout. One time in the West, someone was meeting Baba for the first time, and in their defense, they didn't know anything about spirituality or Baba, and so they going to meet this great figure. So he fasted for 3 days. And he told Baba, I haven't eaten for 3 days. And I don't know if Baba was impressed or not, but Baba's response was, oh, you must be very hungry. But Baba used to even sort of make fun of himself so that you wouldn't have the wrong idea of him. I mean, one time he went into Bangalore with Narina and Chanji. They were trying to buy land to make the Varamangala. For a while, Baba was big on having centers in India. And he was going all over trying to find centers. And they decided he was going to make the Universal Center in Bangalore. And so the prince of the state was very, like Baba, was going to give him lots of land. But there was a lot of legal stuff to do. So they'd gone in town to do this, and they'd gone into the office building or the prince's palace or whatever. And Baba was sitting alone in the car. So he turned sideways, he had his feet dangling out of the car and was sitting there. And there was a work crew, a road crew with a British supervisor. And the supervisor told his crew, go take darshan of that man. And so they all came up and took darshan. And then when Narina and Elizabeth and Chanji came back, Baba told them this was an unusual thing. And Baba said, I don't understand why they did that. The sun must have been shining off my forehead. It made me look like somebody great. And I wondered about it too. And they would say, very unusual for a Britisher to have done that. Because the British did not treat the Indians very well. And for a Britisher to tell people, go take darshan of that person seemed very unusual. But I'm guessing, using the mind, that it probably was a lot of gossip. Oh, this person has come to town and, the Nizam is negotiating for a property. And so there probably was a lot of gossip about that Baba had come to town and was going to open a center. And the British officer must have heard that, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, when Baba, Jean Shaw used to say that when they went to Mount Ojai, Mayor Mount, in California, that one time Baba called them all in to the house. And he seemed very serious. And he said, I want you all to close your eyes and be absolutely quiet for a while. And Jean said, some of us got really excited because we expected some great spiritual experience. I mean, maybe Baba was going to break his silence. We were going to hear the original word, or at the very least, something would happen, some big. And so we were very excited, and we closed our eyes and were quiet. And after a while, Baba claps. Did you hear it? His stomach grumbling. He'd had grapes, and he said, I can't digest grapes. In the 50s, how am I doing? Okay. In the 50s, Bob had a darshan program in Mehrabad. And he told everybody, I want you to feel at home. Forget about your home. Forget about your family. Just be with me and just be completely relaxed. Because only in that way can we have a real sahabas. I want you to share the intimacy of being with me. Just feel as if you're at home. And the next morning, Baba was at Merazad, and he'd be driven out each morning. And he'd come to the interview cabin. Some of you noticed Ted and Janet's cabin. I don't know what it is now. And Baba would have his breakfast there before he would have, the big group meetings. And Baba's breakfast, I don't know if he had a cup of chai, but he would have a little bowl of malai. And in India, you have the milk and you boil it. And then when it cools, the cream rises to the top. And you scoop it off, and that's called malai. And Baba loved it. So they would scoop off the malai, and they'd put it in a little bowl. And in a special pinjra, a little cabinet, a screen cabinet with a latch, and open up, and they close it up. And then the next morning, one of the village boys from Arangown had been deputed to take the tray with Baba's breakfast and take it to Baba. And so he does, and Baba gets it and he says, but there's almost no malai in this bowl. What happened? He calls Pendu. Pendu's in charge. And Pendu said, I don't know, Baba. It was full yesterday. I said, well, look at it. It's not full now. Call the boy. Because I figured the boy must have eaten it. He said, did you have some on the way over? No, I didn't touch it. This is the way it was. I just picked up the tray and brought it to you. I said, Baba, maybe a cat. I said, a cat? How does a cat turn the latch on and open it up? They don't understand it. And the next morning, the same thing happens. The malai is mostly empty. So Pendu said, I have to catch that cat. So Pendu decides he's going to stay up all night watching the cabinet from afar so he won't be visible. And so he does that. And late at night, he sees one of the attendees, one of the Savasis from Bombay comes, and he walks over to the cabinet, he opens it up, he takes out the bowl, he scoops out a lot, eats some eye, puts the bowl back. And so the next morning, Pendu says, Baba, I found the cat. And so Baba said, call him. And turns out it was someone they knew well. Not only that, at the very beginning of the Darshan program, Bob said, if any of you have any health issues, go see Neelu and Duncan, because I want you to not be thinking about anything. And this man was having diarrhea, digestive problems. And so the doctors had told him no fatty foods. So cream was absolutely forbidden. You of all people? Don't you know that's malai? Well, yes, Baba. Well, then why were you taking it? He said, well, Baba, you said we should make ourselves at home. And when we're at home and I can't sleep, I always have a little malai before, and that lets me go to sleep. So that's what I was doing. And that morning, Baba, when everyone was there, Baba repeated the story. He said, of all of you here, he's the only one who's truly obeyed me. Because it seems that it was the honesty, that innocence of that relationship. No, Erich would add, knowing the way Westerners are, he said, but that's because this man was truly innocent. You couldn't, he said, I know you. You would use this as an excuse to do whatever you want. No, you can't get away with that. It's only if you're truly that innocent, that you really were making yourselves at home because you're following, then you can do it. When Baba invites you to visit, he does not want you to be on your best behavior. He does not want you to be the perfect guest. If there's not enough sugar in the chai, he wants you to say so. If the food is too spicy, if the food is too spicy, he doesn't want you to eat it anyway with a sickly smile pasted on your face as the sweat beads on your forehead and your nose begins to run. And you say, oh, it's okay, Baba, it's fine, it's fine. I'm going to interrupt myself now because Balnatu used to see Baba whenever he could, and he had permission to come anytime he could to see Baba. Not everybody was given that privilege. And he was a teacher. So in the summer times, he got 6 weeks off at a stretch. And he would come and spend those 6 weeks at Guru Prasad every summer and be with Baba. And Balnatu, if some of you may or may not know him, was very thin, was always in poor health, was on the point of death for his whole entire adult life. Eric used to call him Lazarus because Baba had raised him from the dead. He had no interest in food, really. I mean, he'd have a couple spoonfuls of rice and maybe a tiny bit of dahi or something. But he would have lunch with the men at Guru Prasad. And afterwards, when they joined Baba again, Baba would ask them, how was the meal? And, they'd say this, and Baba Natu would say, it was fine, Baba. And everybody would start laughing. And Baba Natu thought, well, that was odd. But the next day, the same thing happened. Every time Baba Natu would say fine in Marathi Chand, everybody would laugh. And so Baba Natu noticed not only that, but if he didn't say the food was fine, Baba would keep asking more and more questions. Was it too spicy? Was it salty? And just kept asking questions, so finally Baba would say, it was fine, Baba. And then everybody would laugh. So finally Baba Natu, when Baba's not there, says to them, what's going on? I don't get this. And they said, well, when you say it's fine, the Marathi word, because they all spoke different languages, and they weren't speaking English, Baba, they'd be speaking Gujarati or Marathi or Hindi. And so he said, your word for fine, chand in Marathi, sounds very much like our Gujarati word for shit. So when Baba's asking you, how's the food, you're saying, it's shit, Baba, it's shit. But once they explained that to Balnatu, the joke was over, and Baba no longer kept asking him that way. So if Baba asks you, don't say it's fine. We can't get away with that now. But once you are his, Baba may give you something that you don't want. and in a quantity that you can't handle, and insist that you finish it all. But at least you don't have to pretend that you like it. You just have to obey. But that's a different story altogether. For now, for us, Baba just wants us to be natural. He does not want you to feel the restraints imposed by politeness. For only in uninhibited spontaneity and the intimacy that comes with that can his love flow freely to you. It can be a strain trying to be polite all the time, having to be careful about what you say, trying not to give offense. It's a relief when you're with someone that you know so well, you can just let off steam and not have to worry about hurting their feelings or dealing a death blow to your friendship. Now, Baba, of course, doesn't have an ego. You can't offend him. But you can make his work more difficult if any time he criticizes you or speaks to you sharply, you start to cry. And he's compelled to placate you and jolly you along until you're once more in a good mood. As much as possible, try to bear up and don't ask, "Why, Baba? Why? Why are you doing this to me?" Instead, say, "Thank you, Baba, for accepting me as one of your close ones." Of course, that's easy for me to say. A lot harder to do. And even the Mandali found, especially in the early years, they found this difficult. In the later years, nothing could faze them. But one of Baba's early childhood friends was Bayram, and who was later nicknamed Bua Sahib. And in fact, I was surprised to learn, I always had the impression that after Baba Jan's second kiss, when she unveiled Baba, that he was kind of in a dazed state then for years and years and years. But in 1915, when he was going to see Sai Baba, and that's when Sai Baba hailed him as Pavardigar, and then sent him to see Upasani, who threw the stone, who hit Baba in the forehead and brought Baba back to gross consciousness. It then took Baba 6 or 7 years to totally integrate the gross consciousness and the God consciousness. But in 1915, Baba was aware enough. Golnar told me once that, Baba asked his mother to come with him. He said, "I'm going to go see Sai Baba, and he's going to give me something great, and you should come with me." And Shireen Ma had no interest in going because she didn't like this spiritual nonsense anyway. Baba Jan had stolen, Baba from her, and who knew what Sai Baba, so she didn't go. So Bua Sahib went with Baba. And the only point of that, apart from that it may or may not be interesting, is that he'd been with Baba for many, many years. And in the 20s, he was with Baba at Merabat, and it was too much for him. Baba was just relentlessly teasing him and taunting him. And he said, "Baba, I can't take it anymore, I'm leaving." Well, I said, "You idiot. Where are you going to go that I'm not?" He said, "But Baba, your taunts, the harassment, it's too much now." And Baba said, "Well, why do you think I get angry? I don't get angry for no reason. I get angry because of the way you behave." And he said, "It's my job to wound you and to kill you gradually. But what am I supposed to do if every time I wound you, you start to complain? Am I supposed to stop wounding you?" He said, "I try to placate you. I try to give you explanations. I try to console you." He says, "But, when I get angry, you defend yourself. When I get angry, you should try and pacify me. But now I have to serve you. You're not serving me." He says, "So what am I supposed to do? I give you courage. I want you to endure this because this is my job. My job." And he said, "But because you don't do that, you're impervious to my mercy." And that really struck me. And I was thinking, it's really easy to think about, "Oh yeah, the Lord is our shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He anointeth my head with oil." All that's easy to do with that kind of God. He sets a table in front of my enemies. "And surely goodness and mercy shall follow me the rest of my days." Well, that's fine until you realize that Baba's idea of mercy is that he's going to kill us. He's going to wound us and kill us gradually. That's not really most people's definition of mercy. So Baba puts a little different spin on things, which is one reason why it's so hard for people, worldly people, to understand what spirituality is all about. So I wrote a psalm for the worldly. It's kind of an anti-psalm. I don't know where it is. Oh, pages are stuck together. I say, the Lord has chosen me for his own. The mark of his favor has been stamped upon my forehead. The breath of his concern surrounds me always. He turns my greatest triumphs into dust so that I cannot hold on to them. And he leads me into defeat so that I might have compassion for others who have lost. He embarrasses me and humiliates me so that I might learn humility. For only the humble are open to his guidance. He lets me experience the hollowness of my ambitions so that I might turn instead to him. In order that my first few steps to him are easy, he clears the stones from my path. But if I become too confident of my way, he will let me go astray and wander for years, lost in the desert, until I learn to rely more completely on him. He mercilessly smashes the idols that I've established in my heart, so that one day it may become his place of worship. He systematically destroys every concept I have about God's fairness or righteousness. Yet at the same time, he lets the conviction in him slowly dawn so that I am not blinded by the darkness of despair. Even the winds and weather patterns of the world are arranged so that a breeze of his presence may comfort me when I become becalmed too long. All of creation has been specifically designed to remind me of him. He fills my sails so that I may race to him. But when I come to relish the exhilaration of speed more than the prospect of the final destination, he guides my ship onto a submerged reef where it founders, and I am cast into the depths so that I may cry out to him wholeheartedly to save me. There is no length to which he will not go to bring me closer to him. No pain or suffering he will not inflict if it is necessary. He has choreographed every detail of my daily life so that they are clues to help me solve the puzzle of who I really am. Every person I meet has been specially sent by him to me. And even though sometimes their words are filled with hate, the secret message they unwittingly convey is that he is thinking of me. Even my breath becomes a revelation to me of his constant companionship. He does all this for me because he loves me and because he has chosen me as one of his. But what he does for me, he does for everyone. He does for you because he has chosen each of you as his. In Donkin's diary, there's a passage I love that is sort of like, "Dear diary, such a golden day today. Today Baba fired me like anything." You know, in India, you don't scold, you don't scream, you fire. So Baba fired me and I know I'm one of his now. And Donkin was so happy at last to be accepted. In Sheila Fencer's book, she tells a story that at the end, Donkin was living in Adi's compound, the trust compound, and was a very difficult person. And Adi got fed up with all the things Donkin was doing. So Adi finally arranges that I'm going to bring Donkin out to see you, and you're going to fire him like anything, because I can't stand it. So Baba agrees. So Adi takes Duncan out, and Duncan goes out there, and Baba starts blasting. Is this the way to behave? He's putting you up for free, and this and that. And Duncan just starts grinning like an idiot because he's so happy to be in Baba's presence again. And he doesn't care about the blasting. He's just, and Adi gets so up, Baba, this is what's supposed to happen? You're supposed to blast him. He's not supposed to be grinning there and happy. But, but it seems like that kind of blasting was really the work Baba was doing with his mandali. That wasn't so much for us. And I know when I was there in India, there was a resident who somehow got in and said, oh, being blasted is good. And so he would go out of his way to just mess things up. So the mandali would yell at him. And it never really seemed to me that's not what it's all about. And Mansara used to tell the story that there was a woman who was going to get married. So her mother says, I want you to go see Upasni and get his blessing. So she goes to see Upasni, and Upasni, welcome, what do you want, my daughter? And she says, I've come for your blessing. I'm about to get married, so I'd like your blessing. So Upasni says, you have my blessing. And she just sits there. And Upasni says, well, what are you doing? I gave you my blessing. You can go now. She said, no, my mother says I have to stay until you beat me. And Upasni said, beatings don't come so cheaply. You can't just ask for it. So I think that kind of thing is something Baba did for his work, and I don't understand it. And the mandali at times had trouble understanding it. And I know in the early years, Baba's uncle Masaji was cooking for the schoolboys. And Baba got mad at him because he was wasting food. And when Baba would get mad at the mandal, he would go on and on and on. It wasn't just once. He just kept at it. And it drove them all crazy. And so finally I said, Baba, with your permission, I'm leaving. I can't take this. And Baba said, well, if you can't take my taunts and my barbs, better you should go. And Masaji says, no, Baba, it's not your harsh words. I don't mind that. It's that I don't know when you're berating me like this for your work and when I'm really wasting food. How can I tell? And Baba said, if you understand that, then you understand everything about me. Stay. So Sheila says, but as I said, by the end, nothing fazed. I know in Sheila's book, she talks about one time Baba is really taking Erich to task. And it always struck me as amusing. Well, two things were amusing about. First of all, when Erich would be criticized by Baba, Erich had to read out Baba's gestures. So he has to read out Baba's side of the dialogue. Erich, you fool, you're doing this and that. So Erich is saying, and Baba's saying to him, you've only come here for the food. And I didn't hear this story from Erich, but I'm guessing that Erich must have found that as amusing as I did because, Erich came from a very wealthy background. And they had cooks, he had personal trainers, they had everything where he was growing up. And he left all that opulence to come with Baba and eat one meal a day if they were lucky, rice and dal, rice and dal, rice and dal, and then sometimes dal and rice. And so it was nothing. And so for Baba to accuse Erich of just being there for the food, really, so it didn't faze them. Even Gohir, Baba would bring Gohir to tears all the time because the women, Baba was upset. You weren't so upset that Baba was upset with you as you were upset that Baba was upset. And so she would be weeping. And then Sheila's little girl said, I was amazed because the very next moment I see Gohir on the veranda popping pistachios in her mouth as if nothing has happened because they knew this was Baba's way. And this was, for whatever reason, his work. His relationship with us, I think, is a little bit different. So what I take from this is it's really hard for us to make judgments. It's hard to make judgments about other people because we don't really know what's going on with them. And Erich said that one person used to come to visit Baba, came from Nagpur, which is where Erich was from. And Erich had friends still in Nagpur, and they would write him about this fellow. And in Erich's mind, this guy was a complete scoundrel. which if you don't know, in Indian vernacular is very bad. Rascal or scoundrel, you know. We might use other words, but if you're a scoundrel, you're a So in marriage's mind, this guy's a scoundrel because he's just a complete hypocrite. He comes and he acts like he's the greatest lover Baba's ever had. And Baba seems completely fooled. And Baba sits there and pats him on the back and is so happy to see him. And finally, and meanwhile, Erich would get letters. Do you know what this guy did when he got back here? So it got too much. And Erich said, Baba, don't you know about this fellow? He's such a rascal. He's such a hypocrite. And Baba got really upset and said to Erich, be quiet. What do you know? And Baba held his hand out. And there was light in the room and it cast a shadow on the wall. And Baba says, what do you see? He said, I see the shadow of your hand. And Baba said, that's all you ever see is the shadow of somebody. I see into their heart. So don't tell me whether someone's a scoundrel or not. And I said, I knew. Baba was right. I couldn't see into people's hearts. So I learned from that never to judge anybody. It would take me, I'm still learning that lesson. But that's the difference to Mandali. One time was enough. That was it. Okay? It's not up to me to judge anybody. I was somewhere here, I don't know where. I was thinking, that's sometimes people are better than, they're not as bad as we seem to think they are. And sometimes I like to think that they're much, much better than we think they are. And so this is about that. Also a little difference between the inner and the outer. And I realized one time I was thinking about it, that why sometimes people who write like some of the things they write, I mean, apart from the fact that we're ridiculously egotistical, is that for us, the images, we see them in our mind. And the audience doesn't necessarily see those same images. So I've been on ocean beaches with phosphorescent sand, where you walk along at night and your footsteps glow as you walk. And I've been in India and seen the mud huts. And at 4 a.m, the rumble of the bullock carts as they slowly make their way into town. And the people silently treading the little footpaths in between the villages and the little huts. And so, in my mind, that makes this, I like this prosum because of that. So I'm hoping that'll help you appreciate it more. But early in the morning, I rise and I light my small lamp and make myself a cup of tea. Even though it is still hours before dawn, the slow, steady rumbling of the bullock carts echo in the sleepy night. I look into my teacup. The faint light plays upon the rippling surface. The black waves of the lagoon sparkle here and there with foaming crests as they surge forward to embrace the dark, wet shore. The breeze, swishing through the leaves of the palm trees, sounds like a gentle rain. And there's a tantalizing fragrance of some unknown exotic bloom scenting the balmy night air. As we walk hand in hand upon the beach, our footsteps glow momentarily with phosphorescence. And we turn to watch them blink out one by one as they approach us, until there is only a faint glimmer of light between our toes when we wiggle them in the cool, soft sand. The wind streams our hair behind us, and it tangles it together in an intimate caress. And I know that our love will last forever. A villager, padding silently upon the footpath near my home, looks in and sees only a lonely old woman smiling oddly to herself as she has a cup of tea all alone in the dark. So I like that. I hope you do. We're getting near the end. So because it says something about, I'm just, you know what? We're going to need several sessions on Sunday to cover all the material that that I'm skipping here. So yeah. So so I was going to say that one of the things I take from all this also, it's very hard for us sometimes to judge our own progress because we can't tell what's happening really. And one time I was in India with, I was actually helping to take care of Merwan when he had his Guillain-Barré. And there was a new person who had just found out about Baba and had fallen in love with the Jesawala family, and through them was finding out about Baba. And he came to visit Merwan. And Merwan is paralyzed from the neck down, but is the perfect host. So he's making small talk with this fellow. Merwan would stay up all night long because he had no feeling. He was sensory, like a sensory deprivation tank. And so he was disoriented at night. And so he couldn't sleep. He would be up all night long, and he was exhausted. And now he's making small talk with the stranger. And so the guy's making small talk, and Merwan's rising to the occasion, of course, because Baba would want him to. And the next day, this guy comes back again. And so again, he's talking to Merwan. And Eric suddenly turns to Guy Mai, and he starts yelling at us. "What are you doing? You're eating his head. You're sitting on his chest. Give the and just yells at us and physically drives us out of the room onto the porch. And this fellow who's come is stunned because he's only known the Jesawalas as loving and sweet. And this temper he's just never, and he's shaken. He's, maybe it's better if I leave now. And he leaves. And as soon as he leaves, Guy Mine come back out, and Erich is sunny and everything's fine. And it was very clear to us this was just Erich's way of driving this guy away. And so he doesn't visit the next day. And he doesn't visit the day after that. And on the next day, we get a phone call. And so Erich picks it up. And I only hear his side of the conversation. "Oh, brother, where have you been? We've missed you. Why don't you visit anymore? Don't you love us anymore?" On and on and on. Erich hangs up. And I promised myself when I was going to go do this, I'm not going to pester Erich with questions. That's not my job. My job is, I don't know what my job was, to try and help in any way I could. And but I couldn't help myself. I said, "Erich, what are you doing?" And of course, Erich, "What do you mean? Always, all innocence. Baba, Erich, always innocence. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you went to such lengths to drive this fellow away. And now you were so convincing on the phone, he's going to come back and start visiting again." What to do, brother? That's Baba's way. I learned it from him. It's a game of push-pull. Baba pulls you in, but then he pushes you away, so your love and longing increase even more. And then once it does, he pulls you in. It's just a constant pushing and pulling. So I had a prosum about that, but there's no time for that. I had a prosum about what goes on. Yeah, I've got other stuff. Just saying. I've got a prosum about what goes on at the Samadhi. Actually, maybe if I can find that, I'll read that, because that's slightly amusing. To me, anyway. It's also embarrassing. But how many of you been to India? And been to... Oh, okay. "Oh, Baba, there is so much noise and activity at your Samadhi. Someone is always pouring prasad from a small bag into a larger container. Plastic bags crinkle as garlands are unwrapped. Musicians are tuning their instruments and jockeying for position, like racers gathering at the starting line, waiting for the gun. Someone is pouring prasad from a large bag into smaller containers. There are whispered conversations, since apparently keeping silence only means not talking in a normal voice. A person is turning the lights on and off, following a logic that's not immediately apparent to the casual observer. And someone else is doing elaborate pantomimes to family and friends to convey to them what to do with the garlands they brought. Meanwhile, someone is loudly crunching on the prasad, and someone else is frantically gesturing to ensure that the space between pilgrims standing in the queue never exceeds 18 inches. It seems this business of worshiping you is as hectic as any worldly enterprise. And yet, you smile indulgently. For what parent is not pleased to accept the misshapen mug and the card with the badly drawn picture and the words, "I love you," scrawled across it, from a child who's proudly presenting it as a gift? And all the while, amidst all this spiritual hustle and bustle, you secretly perform the only sacrament that has any real meaning, as you silently and invisibly approach each individual there, and you gently knock at the door of their heart, and if they open it, you fill it with love. So lastly, I didn't get into relationships as much as I thought I might. Well, I knew I would never get to it, but I have one last thing about, and this will be the last one, and then we'll have maybe a moment of silence, and then Paul will let us know when the moment is over. The way of the world and the way the world really is are two completely different things. Newspapers feature stories about politicians and industrialists who are concocting a scheme to renovate a downtown block. And yet, the entire city is under the charge of a half-naked man sitting in a dirty alley, and he is merely carrying out the orders of Babas whose fingers dance as he sits in a chair thousands of miles away. Uri Geller, and I think most of you are old enough to remember Uri Geller, bends spoons with his mind and becomes a sensation. Baba releases energy that makes this the springtide of creation and yet remains anonymous. Alexander conquers a handful of kingdoms in Eurasia and is called great. Baba maps out the destiny of every soul in existence for every second until the next Advent. And if he is known at all, it is mostly because a musician made a bouncy tune featuring the words, "Don't worry, be happy." But it's not just that the avatar's work is universal and done in secret. He goes out of his way to avoid recognition, spending most of his life either in seclusion or incognito. And when he is in the world, he does whatever he can to give people reasons to doubt him. He creates a stir by captivating the biggest stars in Hollywood, and then ups the ante by promising to break his silence in a few weeks at the Hollywood Bowl, only to skip the country and cancel from afar. And talk about negative publicity. What was up with that fake chinchilla coat? Even reporters who were favorably impressed couldn't avoid mentioning it. Baba made so many predictions that didn't come true that even his Mondli decided to celebrate one day when one of them did come true. Is it any wonder that out of billions of people on this planet, only a very small percentage know much of anything about Meher Baba? And of that small percentage, fewer still think it worth their while to find out more. Baba said, "I have come for all, but I am for the few." Do you have any idea how lucky we are to be amongst those few? And yet, after spending almost 50 years with the Avatar, when the women Mandali were asked about it, they might talk about the time an alarm clock went off accidentally when Baba had ordered them to be quiet, and they couldn't get it to shut off or mute its noise even when they smothered it with pillows. Or the time they kept trimming Baba's mustache to get both sides even, until Baba said, "Stop, stop. If you keep this up, I'm not going to have any mustache at all." Even the men, who could talk about world travels and mass darshan programs, tended to talk about small events, which for the most part were completely unnoticed by the world at large. And they too concentrated on personal incidents, on the tribulations of living with the God-man who seemed to delight in giving contradictory orders at the same time, so that whatever you did, you were wrong. As Eric said, life with Baba was one of constant harassment and humiliation. And yet, it was the only life worth living. Gahir would tell story after story, all of which would end with her weeping in despair before Baba because of her inability to care for him, and Baba not much expressing much concern about her distress. When I asked her about this apparent callousness, and I said, "But Gahir, you say Baba was so loving, and every story you tell, you're weeping in front of him." And she said, "He didn't have to say anything. The love just constantly poured from his eyes." It was easy for the Mandali to talk about the hardships of life with Baba, but difficult even for them to adequately describe the joy, the love that suffused it. And that is the difference between the inner and the outer life. The outer life is filled with incidents and events, the inner only with his loving presence. Baba's stories, without question, are fun. Baba's ways are captivating. His form entrancing. His words inspiring. But don't settle for them. Enter that timeless moment and be with your beloved now. Enter that timeless moment and be with your beloved now.
Talk better, Baba.